Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for your AI Just Got a Promotion, what Copilot Cowork means for your business. A couple quick notes before the session. First, this is being recorded and you will receive a recording afterwards. And second, please get your questions into the Q&A panel, and we'll get them answered at the end. Next, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We're joined with Jimmy Ledbetter, VP of AI Strategy and Services at Quisitive, and Cassandra Meras, Chief AI Strategist at Quisitive. And now I'll turn it over to them.
All right. Thank you so much, Courtney. So we are really excited for what we're getting ready to talk about today. So this is something that has been building up now for, gosh, years, honestly, Cassandra. Like we've been dealing with generative AI since it pretty much came out. But what we're really excited about is the ability for us now to actually hire digital employees. That's something that I think has been missing for a little bit. And so I can't wait to talk to you guys about this today. So my name is Jimmy Ledbetter. I'm the VP of AI Strategy and Services here at Quisitive. I'd like to introduce Cassandra Maras. So Cassandra, hello.
Thank you, Jimmy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for your time and investing in really going through what Cowork can do for you. I spend my days helping leaders, helping our clients figure out where AI actually fits into their business and their workflows. So I'm very fortunate that I work across kind of that whole spectrum. Some of our clients haven't landed their first AI use case yet, and they're looking for guidance. Others are very advanced running deployments and just looking to us to be that guidance and expertise to ask them to help guide them on what's next, I should say. So my job's meeting them where they are. The pattern that is emerging that we're going to talk about today that's relatively new is what can we do from an AI perspective to give you some tangible wins? So really excited about this conversation.
And that's such a good point. What can we do? So, as we started looking at this, one thing that we've talked about, and we started doing this in late 2022, early 2023, and we had chat. And chat was cute. I mean, it did some really cool stuff. It answered questions, but did it really save us any time at the end of the day? I mean, we had to go through so many iterations. We had to grow so many different ways. We had to introduce things called RAG, where we could start talking to documents. We had to start finding out what agents are. But this Cowork is something where we then went from chat to actually our digital teammates. So, and Cassandra, you and I have been talking about this a lot about how we now think that we've hired Cowork to be our assistant.
Yeah, absolutely. I found so many opportunities to use Cowork in my own day to day, and we're inundated with wins from the rest of our organization here at Quisitive too. So it's really lovely to hear people say, I don't know how I worked without it, because that's exactly what we want to unlock for them.
And the thing that I love about this, and you've heard me say this a million times, is you're now a programmer, you just don't know it. And so today, one of the things we're actually going to walk everybody here through 3 use cases that Cassandra and I picked out to show everybody like how this thing works in action, because I don't like being in slide decks very long. So, but next slide. Most leaders don't need more AI concepts. we got to get to work. So I think Cassandra, you think it's safe to say that we find everybody kind of finally gets what AI is?
Yes, I think they have their own personal accounts or they've done things on the side, so I think they have a really good representation of basic education for it. It's no longer um, abstract to them. It's more, okay, this is something real, but how do I make it work for my business? And we constantly hear too, our data estate isn't ready for AI, or leaders will say that to us. And it's the worst kept secret, I think, that no one's data state is perfect. Everyone is going to have challenges, but figuring out where AI fits in, I think, is really that best approach. But a lot of our customers are coming with a little bit more advanced techniques these days, which is good.
And at the end of the day, as we're going to start walking you all through what Cowork does, it's more of the process. Like we've been saying this now for years. Like, how do we actually document what the process is? How do we then, take our data state? Because there is not a perfect data state. Cassandra knocked it on the head. We've been trying to fix data states now for 20 something years. So it's one of those things that we need to give. We don't need the concepts anymore. We now have a tool. And we need to walk through the next step of how do we build out these enterprise solutions from end to end. So there's a couple of different things that we want to talk about before we actually get into the Copilot itself, which is the Copilot Cowork. So first thing is, if anybody's familiar with Claude Cowork, there's a little bit of a difference between the two. So Claude's Cowork is actually specific to a local PC. So you can imagine from security side of it, that can be hard for some people to actually open up security to your PC. Are we giving write access? Remember, inside of Claude Cowork, you have, and everybody here knows all of my dad jokes are bad, but you get Tasmanian devil access to that PC. You can read, you can write, you can delete. I have seen people be like, I've just wiped out a spreadsheet. Whoops, that happens. This is a secure cloud-based agent runtime. So this is actually sitting inside of your tenant, inside of your OneDrive, inside of M365. So that way it understands how all of that works. And what's also important is this thing is grounded in the new IQ space. And this is the one thing I love, and I've been using this talk track a lot. We've all seen AI. Microsoft gave it an IQ. And work IQ is so important. So this can read through your emails, your meetings, your documents. How many of us live in Teams chats? I know for a fact that the two people on your screen live in there day in and day out. And it keeps your permission. So we don't have to worry about, did somebody take a spreadsheet, dump it into their M365? We still get to track all of that stuff. But you actually had a couple others that we wanted to talk about here after we get that grounding piece of it.
Absolutely. Jimmy, were you asking me for some examples?
Yeah, well, we were talking about the skills across like the M365 surface. So, that was one of those things that we actually had it be able to tie into the M365 accounts, and how do we tie into Outlook? How do we tie into that? Because you do that a lot, don't you?
Absolutely. I think even I focus a lot on our tip of the spear activities with our customers. So I'm doing a lot of research. I'm looking at not just their business, but if we had any historic meetings with them, what does that look like? So we're not just injecting at an entry point that is showing that we don't have any, knowledge transfer going on. So being able to sift through my emails, being able to sift through my Teams chat, being able to sift through all of these areas or loops rather really helps be able to pull that into kind of one singular spot. And then skills being that vehicle to make sure that that process is repeatable. I don't have to tell it to do the same steps each time. I just have to plug and play and talk about a different topic.
And I love that. And then when you finally end with the outputs, our outputs for so long have just been a chat, and what are you going to do with the chat? But now, Brian Blaine and I, we were at FabCon a while ago and we talked about how data estates start and end with Excel. The good thing is we can now use something like Cowork to go ahead and help moderate and create data files that can then be stored in your outputs in OneDrive that can then be picked up by something like Fabric. So now if you can think of like most of the CFOs or anybody who lives in that space, they can use Cowork, they can architect the data, they can then put it in a very secure data estate, which can then be managed by Purview, secured by Defender, and all of that stuff is now put in one spot as opposed to, hey, I'm going to give you a share link to a drive.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Jimmy, because I remember that use case. I remember you and Brian working on it, and the premise was really around M&A. You get a random spreadsheet during due diligence, and you have to go back and reconcile it against all of these other aspects that you really need to make sure are in check before you can move forward. And the process of wrangling that information is just so challenging too, especially related to your workflows. So being able to see that use case mature to today, and I know we're about to step into a live example, but planting the seed of that's just one use case. It's one applicable framework. So many other areas within a business that have a repeatable pattern as well.
And that's the thing that is so important is those repeatable patterns is really what's going to make Cowork hum. So what we're going to do for everybody is we are actually going to include 3 different prompts. Now we're going to jump out of the slide deck for a second because neither one of us want to be in a slide deck very often. So we actually got together and we came up with 3 different examples that we want to show everybody today. So the first thing is we're going to identify 20 clients. Then after that, we're going to, Cassandra's going to talk about annual plans and offsite strategies. And then I'm actually going to show how I created an interactive dashboard that I personally use every single day. So that way I make sure that I get to see what exactly I'm doing day in and day out. So let me go ahead and share my window out and let me know when you see my screen. Okay, can everybody see a screen that comes into Cowork? So,
Yes.
all right. So the way that you go through is so Cowork has to be enabled. You have to be part of the Frontier program. So what I did was now I do want to try to be a security guy someday. So I don't want to leak out any type of sensitive data. So we have created some synthetic data sets. So you are going to see some more curated data for this one. So what I've done is I've synthesized out an extract from D365. So we use Dynamics here as our CRM. That's our source of record. Now, the problem with data is there's so much that you can do with it. People don't know where to start. So what I did here was I uploaded a copy of my documents and I said, using this data set, I want you to identify what the top 20 clients are that I should be going after. And what it is I want you to do is I want you to make a Word document that explains how you came up with that particular suggestion. And then I want you to make a PowerPoint that I can present to leadership as to why they think that's the best use of your time. So for everybody at home, what's really important about this is think about what I just did. I said, take data, and now I'm going to go to my admin and I'm going to say, admin, can you create a PowerPoint for me? And then I'm going to my data scientist and I'm saying, hey, data scientist, help me identify what different customers I should be looking at. But I just did that in a singular chat. And here's where it absolutely went down and did some really, really cool stuff. So it says here, Jimmy, both of your deliverables are handy. They scored all 200 accounts. They found that the top 20 were out there. And let's go ahead and look at the proof that it gave us first, which was this first data set. We'll give it a second. So this is what the data looked like originally. And I know we live in this day in and day out, but that to me is not super exciting. So what is exciting is the Word document that it came up with. So now it says, okay, here's your top 20 clients. Here's my executive summary behind it. The methodology. Now, with anything AI, it's important to know that we can say, what are the accounts? How did you come up with this answer? Because it's going to try to come up with something. It weighted my pipeline for me. It told me what was open, what the opportunity count was, what other scoring factors were there. It told me that it filtered data out. So again, this is conversational AI. I can say, I don't agree with this. It identified what the 20 ranked accounts were. Why? So it says here, the pipeline concentration is actionable, Microsoft co-sell alignment, relationships, depth, lower acquisition costs, diversity, strategic build-ins, and then how to translate this into action. In a matter of 10 to 15 minutes, it created all of this for me, but I'm still probably not going to read all of that stuff. I'm going to go through and look at the presentation itself, where it went in and said, here are the bottom lines behind it. Here is what my pipeline looked like. Here's what my co-sell opportunities are. How did it build everything out? What did it weigh? Here's the accounts I need to be checking out about. And now I can sit down with my boss and say, you know what? I have checked everything, because this is a trust but verify, because you don't want to just take everything at face value. But with this trust but verify, here is why I think that this is the best use of my time, and my leadership should be able to help me out with that. So Cassandra, that's something that I think we see a lot of people doing, is how do we take that data out of spreadsheets and actually turn it into something actionable?
Absolutely. Just think about through my career and even just random ancillary asks from our clients. It's always, hey, can we take this information and turn it into a story? And being able to go through and have this as an initial draft, So I can go back and I can perfect it, or I can add nuance, or I can add and explain anything else. But this would kickstart so much activity for me personally. And I know several of our clients too that are probably in active planning phases. Maybe they're even thinking about 2027 at this point. I hope that the folks that have joined today are starting to see the opportunity and the ability to concatenate all of this information together rather quickly. Because you just need that start, right? It's not going to be 100% ready to ship out, but it gives you a nice catalyst to pull everything together.
I love that. We've talked about this for years. It lets us become the editor, not the author. How many times does the bulk of our time spend with absolutely just staring at the blank screen going, where do I begin? Now, y'all, trust but verify. You're asking a lot of this right now. It's giving you its best guess. It's got a lot of really good science behind it. It's actually using sound data science principles behind this to get the information out. But sometimes you need to chat with it some and say, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say. Prompt it. Ask it those questions, because we'll talk about it. We want to be able to talk about this over and over again and use this repeatable process again and again. All right. Now, Cassandra, you actually came up with a really good one that I liked, and I'd love for you to just frame the story behind it, especially around strategy sessions, OKRs, all of that fun stuff. So what led you up to your use case?
Yeah, absolutely. So two things. I do run a lot of strategy sessions for our clients as well. Either we dig into specific topics or workflows, or we're looking at how do we start to transform our strategy and turn it into an AI first approach. So we have a lot of sessions, we'll have a lot of KPIs that we discuss that get mapped back to certain initiatives, but sometimes that information can either be fragmented, or sometimes there will need to be additional conversations. And we go through a lot of planning exercises ourselves. I think the beauty of AI is just how rapidly it evolves. So having a deck that you say, hey, this isn't going to change, we're fine, we can just code lock this and call it a day. The fact now that we're going to have a lot of fluid sessions that drive strategy, that change our minds, or how does Cowork even fit in now for our clients that are looking at expanding on their AI journey? So this really came about from having those discussions internally and both externally with our clients, and ultimately pulling that all together into a cohesive narrative so we can go through and correct it. We want to see whether or not this makes functional sense in reality, not just insights or conclusions or recommendations that we've gathered. We want to make sure that it's real. So this gives us the opportunity to pull all that information together, visualize it in different formats as well, because we know some of our execs, some of them really love spreadsheets and you can't get them out of it. Some of them really love PowerPoint, and if you don't visualize it, they're not listening. And then some execs prefer this dashboard feel. I'm pretty partial to this dashboard feel myself, because I get to have everything organized a certain way and it's very fluid. So just also think about this use case as being quite applicable to other areas of the business, and then meeting the needs of the different requirements or different asks from your execs. I think even, what was it, last week, Jimmy? Someone that we were chatting with was discussing, one of their execs really loves an Axios type format,
Yes.
where they wanted it to be brief, they wanted it to be to the point, but they wanted to make sure that the details flowed from a narrative perspective very well. And that is a completely different communication style. So representing that is now our opportunity with this use case here.
Well, and I love that, because everybody's communication styles are very different. If you look at the two of us, ours are very different. For you love the details, you love getting into the weeds behind it. For me, I'm a bullet point type of guy. So that bridging that communication gap between different people and presenting the same thing multiple times, but with a different perspective, I think is something that's insanely valuable. But one of the other things I want to talk about is, as Cassandra was putting this together, the amount of research you put in there was still important. I mean, it was still important for you to go out and put in quality information inside of this so it could build a dashboard. So we still don't want to take away from somebody the fact that they still have to put in the work to get the information that can then be interpreted.
Yes.
So
Always that process.
it is. So scrolling through this now, what's important with this particular prompt? It says from this transcript and Outlook. Now again, we're tying in areas that we haven't seen before. So we've got this transcript, we've got Outlook. From the last 60 days, build a Word annual plan, a PowerPoint kickoff deck for the team on site, and an interactive HTML priorities and OKR board. And I love what you came up with here because it led the narrative. Like you do just a master's class at like, how do I guide people to the spot where they have to make a decision? So having this up here at the top by the numbers, and again, adding in that interactivity in here. Like I haven't coded HTML in years, and now here we are, we're web developers all over again.
Exactly.
Then having your OKRs in here to where you can start looking at, like what the different OKRs are, talking about the intentionality, and then where the connected hubs land. I love that. I really applaud you for coming up with a really good, solid use case and something that we can work with our clients, because one of the things that we do is we still take a lot of information, do a lot of research, but this helps us more with I would say like the office back end of this work.
Absolutely. And then as you're iterating through it, you involve other departments, involve other areas of the business, and you can in real time edit that as well. So I think there's really some value to that conversation, having this not just as a document that has to go through another feedback loop, but you can iterate in real time with the team too.
I love that. The other thing, so going to our third and final piece of this is all of us are getting inundated with so much data. I can't tell you how many times I look at my email box and it's noon and I'm already 200 deep. That's a problem. We have access to more information now than we've ever had in our history. And so for me, the one thing that Cowork does a really good job of is it speaks to all my pieces of the ecosystem, but it lets me put it together. So this is one of the actually very first use cases that you and I came up with was, how do we create a daily dashboard? So, and I'm going to talk about a skill here in a second, but what I have is I have a skill, which is a repeatable framework that I can use over and over again. And y'all, my prompt is there's slash in the name of the skill, which is daily report. And I'm going to show you all my very, very, very complex skill here in a minute. And I just tell it to generate the report and it goes to work. And what I also did with it is, I don't know about you, but like AI kind of looks the same after a little bit, so I went around and kind of started finding some different templates, if you will. And I said, you know what? I need to make a all-in-one dashboard. And this is what I created. And so now the names have been changed to protect the innocent. So I am not Alex Morgan, but it has been changed. But this tells me how many meetings I had for this week, what my sent emails are, unread need in reply, and then my headlines. One thing that I liked, what I told Copilot or Cowork to do, was I said, you know what? I need for you to help me generate the response. So I actually told it to create this little button that says open in the mail app. And it opens up my mail app inside of here, because I don't just want to auto send a reply because, again, bad dad jokes, I hate when I get an email that says, I hope this email finds you well. It's like, that's not me. That is fake. But you can see here where it actually read the email and it tells me what it thinks a response can do. And I can either love it or I can hate it. What my calendar looks like, what my week looks like. So here's my week calendar. I need to read at least 5 to 10 articles a day So here are the 5 major articles that we found for today around AI. I post on LinkedIn a lot. So here's what my LinkedIn post needs to look like. I can now click copy text, open LinkedIn. It actually opens my LinkedIn. And now I just go through and I paste this in. And so now I've got my LinkedIn post. Now I want to double check it because I do want to add some tweaks to it, but at least it gives me a place to get started. And then I can check my sent activities to show everything that I've sent over the last little bit. All of that was being able to done through a skill. And this is something that we get really passionate about because these skills are just repeatable processes. And y'all, I'm going to show you what my skill looks like. So this is it. This is it. So I save this into OneDrive. I said it's my daily report, generate a weekly status report. And I go prompt after prompt after prompt after prompt, where it says like, get my sent emails and calendar events for the past week, gather me unanswered emails and determine what emails I need to answer. Get me the 5 top AI stories for the day, create a LinkedIn post, generate an HTML file that looks like this. And I found a picture of a dashboard that I liked. Generate my responses and have a button that you can click that will open my local email client. I actually gave this thing depth and breadth. And I know you've been using skills a lot too. So
Absolutely. Uh, what I love about this is the new frontier of prompting, right? Remember when we would go through very detailed and prescriptive methodology on prompting? And at the beginning, we would tell our clients, don't lose that skill, don't lose that muscle, because you're going to need it, particularly for agents. And even as you're seeing that evolution, it does not have to be as sophisticated, but you still do have to tell it what you want. You have to be outcome oriented. And also, thank you, Jimmy, for not letting everyone know that the 200 emails that you get are probably mostly from me. But we'll leave that off for the daily dashboard stat.
And it's funny because it's true, but that's also things is like I have one that I don't want to show anybody, but it does say, hey, have my execs emailed me? I need to let them know like ASAP. It's one of those things. But you said something that I really want to tie into. It's outcome oriented. Like this is what I need to do day in and day out to save you time. I probably don't need to check to see if my Amazon order went through, but I probably do need to check when my CEO sent something to me so we can actually have it score it. All right, y'all. Those are 3 hands-on examples. Like these are things that we use here. We use these a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. And now, and for everybody, and we're going to save some time for questions here at the end, but we are going to share this deck out. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the history of what this is. We've given concrete examples, but we're going to split this up because I want everybody to be able to walk out of this and be able to say, this is what I'm going to do next when it comes to delegating my work. So I'll take the first 3. So we just showed you the executive briefings, weekly digest, running on a schedule, pulling your meetings. I literally just showed you what that looks like. Calendar optimizations. I will actually ask Cowork sometimes just to be like, hey, I want to plan out the following series of presentations. What does that look like? Good thing is it will actually go in and read my Outlook calendar. It can actually set up what some of the meetings are. And it also says, hey, Jimmy, you don't have enough time to prep for this. Like as much as you're back to back to back. And how can I help you with these meeting prep packs where it's like, here's your talking points, here's your materials, here's everything you've got to build. Again, it lets me be the editor, not the author, but it's become that administrative assistant that I really need to keep me on track. But you had a couple that you added on here as for 4 and 5.
Absolutely. So when we talk about things like research to deliverable workflows, thinking back to the couple of examples of where I wanted to draft, OKRs based off of meeting transcripts, where I wanted to pull together a deck for planning to support conversations on what do we do next and how do we get there. So all of this relates together. We have things like competitive analysis. So if we're going out there and we're trying to help our customers define, do I build or do I buy a AI capability? Help me work through that. There's so many different possibilities too. And then putting myself in the position of the customer, if I'm going out and looking at my competition and what they're doing differently and how I can improve my business model, I think that's a perfect way to start to synthesize that information, maybe gathering that research and putting it on a scheduled recurring basis.
Mhm.
And then the custom interactive apps. As Jimmy said, we're all developers now. So being able to create a dashboard that is not just a dashboard that exists, lives in the ether, but it's germane to you and it helps you move the needle. I think that this has opened up a whole new perspective, a whole new suite of opportunities for folks to be able to make AI work for them.
And one of the things, and we're just going to tell a story outside of school. Vibe coding is kind of the bane of our existence in some areas where you see somebody who has spun up something and you're like, uh-oh, what do I do with this? But I love what you put in here is like it ties back into your content. It's off a single source of truth because the vibe coding is not normally the front end that's the problem. It's the enterprise back end that's the problem. How do I know that it's telling the same story off of the same data every single time? So the UI is the fun, pretty piece behind this one. But now that I know it's going to hit my M365 tenant, my data that we have worked together as an organization to put out, now I'm a little bit better equipped to do vibe coding where I know I'm going to get consistent answers across the board. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so what still requires human judgment? Y'all, I've recently heard an article where they're like, we're all going to be working for AI managers. Now, that's great from performance reviews, and all that fun stuff because most of us use AI to help us write them because otherwise we'd have one sentence performance reviews. But there is still a lot in here that requires human judgment. So the way I want to talk about this first is strategic decisions. Copilot can analyze, but it should not determine what your business should do. As you just saw, I asked it, who are the top 30 customers I need to go after? How did you come there? Why? Asking those follow-up questions, or more importantly, as we've seen in our world, the processes are the most important part. Because once you get that done, you need to have approvals with consequences. You've got to make sure that you're still sending emails out. You're still checking to make sure everyone needs your confirmation. You can't just delegate your whole world to AI because one of the things we've seen is, well, hilarity ensues when somebody starts to delegate and they don't know what they need. So, and Sandra, you did some work on like brand voices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this really goes back to, yes, it can generate insights quickly, but we also have to make sure that it's grounded in expertise. So you want to incorporate that look and feel. It's not going to completely replicate, what you said. So Jimmy, I know when you're sending me an AI generated response, and it usually is no, but at the same time too, making sure that it includes not just your brand voice, your look and feel, how you do business. It may not know that off the bat, so that's why you have to direct and tell it and really work with it through that iterative process. And then anything expensive to get wrong, so that legal language, the public facing claims, you don't want to go out and say, hey, this is best thing since sliced bread, even if it is. You want to make sure that you're being a good steward of your company and that you're not letting AI generated results make any fantastic claims that you don't support or you wouldn't, bet your paycheck on. So that goes through making sure the human is in the loop and just back to all of those other aspects that you said. This is a starting point, but we can't just be asleep at the wheel. We have to make sure that we're thoughtfully steering it and that it adheres to, all of our best practices that we've established internally.
I'm going to steal the falling asleep at the wheel because I think it's good because that's how you end up in a ditch. So
Okay,
not the way that you want to go through, because this is actually a really good way to talk about, building to keep pace with autonomy. So the good thing is there is some certain levels of autonomy inside of here. So I actually saw a question in here. One of the things people were asking about was, how do we make sure it's not accessing other people's data? It still has the same boundaries, the same guidelines that your M365 tenant does. It's not a whole new set of rules. So that's where, when people are buying these other tools and rolling them out, now you're doing a whole new set of governance. And AI governance is tricky right now. Even us as experts in the field, we're still constantly editing our governance procedures. So this keeps everything with what you've already followed, because not only do you have it in the same tenant, but now you've got auditability, so every action is auditable in Purview. So being able to observe this end to end, start to look at what these agents are going to do, which then leads to, like, your labeled output. We can start storing these things, we can label them, we can govern them, and then the admins gives access controls to who, what, where, when, why. So all of that behind governance is something that we love having conversations about, because this is something that, again, is just taking what we've already seen in the Microsoft space, and it's just making it a little bit more user friendly to get the information out that we need. So, Cassandra, we were talking about, if somebody's doing a realistic first cohort, like, what is it that we typically recommend that somebody does?
absolutely. So, in the beginning, I mentioned this concepts of start to look for your loops. These are workflows where maybe you just don't need a chat window and you just need that teammate that you mentioned earlier, Jenny. So, what shows up at the same time every week? And say it's a status report you rebuild every Friday from 5 different threads. Maybe it's you have to reconcile what your team said internally versus what the client said or communicated, or maybe you have a Monday morning meeting with your execs and you have to stitch together what happened, what transpired through the weeks, what those updates are. So start to think about those areas in which you have these repeatable workflows where you need that kind of extra assistance or guidance, because ultimately those are going to be those very real recurring things that come up often. And I would say that the best candidates for this are probably departments that get inundated with requests. We've just worked with an HR department at another client, and we've spent some time with operations-driven departments, and those can all be very different in other organizations, but they will know what comes up often, and they will know how often they're asked to pull something together. So that is a perfect starting point as a catalyst for the rest of those corresponding weeks where you can build on your momentum.
And I love finding the patterns, because that's the one thing. We are creatures of habit. Patterns are in everything that we do. And once you find those patterns, it then becomes rinse, cycle, repeat, especially when you're starting to get into skills. Those are things that are repeatable. Now, Cassandra, you love talking about ROI and everything of that nature. So these are some things that we've talked about. Like, where are we actually seeing true value inside of using Cowork?
Absolutely. So when we talk about the things that eat our time, I think about research. I love research, but it tends to absorb a majority of my day. And ultimately, I need that research so I can go and have more meaningful client conversations. So it's not so much about how much time are you saving here and there, what can be a shortcut, but what are you doing to repurpose that time? So if I save 10 hours a week, I would love to have 10 hours a week of spending more time with our clients, helping them on their AI journey, building agents for them, things like that that will make a difference. So I think as you all are evaluating what Cowork has done for you, or maybe what you would like to do in Cowork, start to think about, if I could automate this report, or if I can wrangle all this information, what am I going to do with my extra time? You'll probably have more meetings because that's what happens to all of us. But if we're able to at least direct the flow of our day, and we're at least able to maybe reclaim some extra time to spend with our wonderful clients or even our colleagues, helping them upskill, then that is a great way of repurposing that. So we'll say, start even thinking about it from a domain perspective. If you're in sales and you're looking at leveraging Cowork, you want to go out and spend more time with your clients, you want to close more business, it's going to be a catalyst for that. So start to think about how you can tie it to probably things that you're already measured upon.
I love it. And we've got just a couple more things, and we want to be very cognizant of time. So, again, where to start? So, one move by Monday. So, if you are the administrator here, I want you to make sure that you enroll in the Frontier program. So, you go through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. That's the gate where everybody follows. Make sure you're a part of that. That's how you're going to unlock this. If you are a leader, pick a workflow. Like the worst thing that you can possibly do right now is just say, here's Cowork, go do something. Find something, be thoughtful with how you're doing it, and pick that workflow and pick a recurring workflow, and then start to create your first prompt. And think about these less as prompts and as more as how are you hiring that first employee. So now you do a lot with piloting. What do you think makes us a good pilot there, Cassandra?
I would say that, again, going back to those recurring workflows, probably identify three key things that you have coming up within the next 30 days. So either you have a big planning session, or either you have maybe you're starting to talk about budget too. Those conversations are coming up earlier and earlier for different departments and different businesses as well. Start to think about those recurring things that come up. And if you have a couple of folks that are maybe using Copilot to begin with, or maybe they're using a different AI tool, they will be fantastic at this. But target folks within the business, they will start to have those moments where they say, I don't know how I lived without this. So I would recommend that scoping it to those individuals that have to gather information frequently, pull it together, and synthesize it either in finance or either in sales, they will be really great candidates. And then beginning with the end in mind, how are you going to call that pilot successful? That is something that sometimes our clients struggle with too, especially as needs change. And that's something that we struggle with as well. I may set
Absolutely.
off to create a skill, but it may look entirely different than what I imagined. So I would recommend as well what you're looking to get out of it is going to be as equally as important as the individuals that you identify.
I love that. And the individuals and the partners. And that's why we're here. So one of the things is Quisitive actually had access to this early. You and I were playing with this before it was commercially available. So that's where finding the right partner who can help you out with. And we're going to get to questions there in a second, but I see a lot of people saying, how do we learn more? How do we learn more? That's why having a trusted partner who actually sits there and understands exactly what this looks like before it showed up, we think is important. So we were told to end pretty much on time. So what we want to do is for everybody, let's talk about handing off your real work. So what I want you all to do is I want you to take a screen snap of the QR code that on there. We can share your feedback. You can win a $100 Amazon gift card, which I would love to have, but unfortunately the presenters can't win it. We do have a couple of things that we would love to talk to you about. We have a Copilot adoption program that is second to none. And so it's not just Cowork, but it's like, how do you make sure your M365 tenant's ready? How do you make sure that Copilot is ready? A lot of the stuff we showed you, there's actually Copilot agents that can work inside of Excel that can do the whiteboarding for you. We've got notebooks. How do we work inside of that? So if you guys are interested, if you're wanting to make sure that you get the most out of those licenses that are humanly possible, love for you to take a screen snap of that. Come talk to some of us and we can make sure that we can get you thoroughly adopting these programs. And then we also, now Copilot is included in Microsoft's what we call their E7 licenses. So one of the things that we're proud to announce is the fact that we are scheduling a free E7 briefing. So if you all are having questions about what does that E7 license look like, how do we make sure that we're getting the right amount of information out of it? How do we get the right value? Where does Entra fit in? We would love to be able to have a conversation with you. So that QR code helps out also. So now let's go through. There's a lot of questions out here. So I think we still got a
We
couple of
answered
minutes.
some.
Let me see. So I'll answer the easy one. Will the slides be shared after the event? Yes. Oh, that one's already been answered. Um,
You can't answer one that's already been answered.
I can. I just did. Just look at me. So, um, does the one prompt, three deliverables concept cause concern from a management and governance perspective? How can you maintain defensible governance, security, retention, and privacy controls when a single AI prompt can generate data in multiple places at once? I've got my feedback on that one. So if it's okay, I'll do that. And then Cassandra, if you want to go over the top of that, I think it's to me, it's still generating all of the information inside of M365. So unlike the other ones where it's developing them in your desktop, you have a single governed area. But for me, that I think the most important thing is how it's generating the data or generating artifacts based on your data that you have inside of your Microsoft tenant. Now you've got things like Purview, you've got things like Defender, you've got all of that built into that control plane. And so I think that that helps out because we want to make sure that we have, a governed stack, not just governed data. So, Sandra, I don't know if you have anything to add on that one at all, or
I'm just really happy to hear that question too, because I think as well that probably reaction was, oh no, there's going to be all this version control issues or all this information that's sprawling out there and we don't know how to contain it. So I think knowing that there's a method to it is very, very great. And also that question is wonderful. So it's something that should be asked.
it was. And then the last one, because I think we're at time, but love the demo, want to learn more. How did the daily dashboard change your work or improve things? It looks like a single pane of glass, but less insights. Perhaps I don't understand. So for me personally, it was putting everything on that single control plane, being able to use my desktop application with it. But I do also have a couple other dashboards that I use that I create often that do provide me more insights. So that's my more summary level, but I also have more detailed level where it's, if we're prepping for a big customer a call, I will actually have it say, hey, group all of this by a particular customer call. You figure out what those emails are. I then audit everything. And it's like, okay, as I'm working together with Cassandra or Greg or people in my organization, what is it that I need to know to go into that? So the good thing is now you don't have to hire a coder to create 5 different dashboards. I can now say, here's dashboard 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it helps me find my information.
And one thing I'd like to add to that too is it's kind of, what's in a name? What's in a summary? Some people will just want 3 bullet points and that's a summary. And some people just want a couple of modules on their dashboard and call it a day. I love all the detail as possible. So even the skill that Jimmy showed, I'd probably have a lot more to it, maybe a little bit too much on my dashboard, but I like knowing all the details. So I would also advise that you can customize that, add more insights. You can even go back and edit your skills because say it's not performing the way that you'd like it to, or say you have another idea outside of that, and you just know that it can be very dynamic as well to your needs. And I saw confetti, so
I love the confetti too, and they took it away
Yeah.
from us. We couldn't play with the confetti. So, all right, folks. Well, we went 3 minutes over, so apologies for that. But I hope the goal for today was just to show you what this could do. This is past chat. This is now the ability for you to hire your digital consultant, do the work for you. The good thing is you can get in there, you can play with it, you can try it, work with us. We can help you with those Copilot enablements. We'd love to chat with you about that. So, but in closing, my name is Jimmy Ledbetter, and as with me, Cassandra Morris. Thank you so much for being the co-host today. I appreciate all the insights that you gave out of this one. So we would love to see you guys in the next one. So have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.